Back here on SportsLine. Titans Talk was last night, but we are talking Titans tonight because of the decision today by the team to part ways with Jon Robinson. 66-43 in 6+ seasons. Team's headed to a 5th playoff appearance, 3rd straight division title. But they never got over the hump to win the big one. And clearly that's what Amy Adams-Strunk wants. And she does not like what she's seen this season when the team has seemingly regressed from last year. Obviously a beatdown on Sunday in Philadelphia, 35-10 against the Eagles when A.J. Brown goes off. That trade from last spring, that result on Sunday, maybe the final straw for Robinson despite all the good things he did in terms of results on the field for much of his time in Tennessee. Phone lines are open, 737-7767, the number. And we begin with Eric. Eric, what's going on tonight?
Hey, I did not think I'd be calling you Steve 2 nights in a row, but, you are absolutely right, 1,000%. I definitely think that A.J. Brown, way he played against the Titans on Sunday in Philadelphia, because of the report she was there, I think that was the last straw. I'm not surprised it happened. I just thought if it was going to happen, it was going to happen at the end of the season, not still with like 5 games to go. But also you were talking about, of course, free agent signings as well as other draft picks that did work, and other players have been signed, of course, have been injured, and of course he has no control of that. Like, of course, Harold Landry getting hurt earlier this year, and Taylor Lewan, who I think his career with the Titans is done. But also, I think a little bit too is some of the Titans players, former players over here, who, whether it's the scheme or whatever you want to say, that are doing, whether you want to say great or okay with other teams. And I'm talking about players like Jack Conklin, who went to the Browns. You've got Dennis Kelly, who left here. I think he's with the Packers. I'm not sure. Roger Saffold with Buffalo. Corey Davis is now with the Jets. The Jets with the Giants. However you want to term all that stuff, it's it's whatever you think. But here's one of the things also that really shocked me. I was at a Titans event because I had some connections that Amy Adams-Strunk was at, that she spoke at a few years ago, and also Eddie George was there, or the former Titans players, people in the media. And I got to meet with her, and I did introduce myself, and I was shocked. This was the first words out of her mouth when I met her. She said, "I recognize your voice. You call sports talk radio. I appreciate your opinions, and also I'm glad that you support the Titans." And when I heard that, that stunned me, because you don't think the owner normally listens to sports talk radio, but apparently she does. And I don't know who all she listens to or whatever, but apparently, she does that, and she also cares about the fans and the voice of the fans. So I'm sure she heard a lot of this stuff about Jon Robinson and what was going on, and I'm sure she's also heard a lot of the stuff, Chris, about Todd Downing. And one of the things you don't know and wonder what's going to happen after the season. Will she go to Mike Vrabel and ask him, are you going to fire Todd Downing or am I? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's also possible something like that could happen, because she definitely, I believe, cares about this team. She speaks with the success that this team's had over the last few years, that they should be doing better than they have. And I think what started that, of course, was the run to the AFC Championship game. But now, of course, the last 2 home games had the first one and done just playoff losses. And I think that's kind of just really just upset the fans, and also just the talent that's on the team now. And it's just going to be interesting to see moving forward what happens. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that. As always, good talk to you, Steve. I'll get off and let you get some other callers. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, good stuff. Great to talk to you even on a second night in a row. Yeah, I agree with a lot of the things that are said there. The thing about Todd Downing, that to me makes this a more shocking decision based off of the timing. Todd Downing had a DUI, or at least was arrested for it. It hasn't played itself out in the legal process yet, but was arrested for DUI just over 2 weeks ago. He's still calling the plays. And look, I'm not saying they needed to rush there. You can let the legal process take its place. I'm fine with that. But it is a bit crazy to me that that guy's still on the sideline calling plays for an offense that has been completely inept at this point. And Jon Robinson, who's been the architect of now 7 straight winning teams, is out of a job with 5 games left to go in the season. And what that clearly says is, in the opinion of probably other people in the building, but ultimately Amy Adams-Strunk, Todd Downing's offensive inefficiency is due to a lack of offensive talent. It's not the plays he's calling or the offense it's running. It's the players he's been given. And who gives him the players? It was Jon Robinson. That's to me what that says. And I think it also says that Mike Vrabel has a big influence here. I don't know if he out and out said you need to fire Jon Robinson, but I think he has a big-time influence in what's going on. And who knows? I mean, Vrabel is a hot commodity. And now there's some rumors out there about Ryan Day. Now, they just got in the playoffs, so it's certainly not going to happen anytime soon. But after losing back-to-back games against Michigan, there's some rumors out there about Ryan Day. May not be long for the Ohio State job. That's Mike Vrabel's alma mater. That's where he started his coaching time. Would there be any interest in Mike Vrabel going back to college to coach his alma mater? Maybe. I don't know. Could he give the Titans an ultimatum? I don't know that happened, but it's just there are signs that there was a growing rift within the building about the events of the last year in terms of the direction of the team and some of the player personnel decisions. And now Jon Robinson's out, and Mike Vrabel is going to have a whole lot more power. Back to the phones we go. Say hello to Ulyss. Ulyss, good evening and welcome to SportsLine.
I was just saying, the guy you was talking about, the offensive coordinator, I was going to fire him. There's no sense in just near on down the fire mill. Get rid of him now. And another thing, they don't keep Simmons, they're going to let him go too. Because he has a kind of contract yet. And so that's all I have to say. You have a good day now. Good night.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the call. The Jeffrey Simmons thing, we'll have to find out. Because that was a Jon Robinson thing, and all indications was that he was trying to create some space to make sure that Jeffrey Simmons was going to stay a Titan. Now, I guess that's Mike Vrabel's decision, or whoever ultimately gets the GM job, who you got to think at least will be partially selected by Mike Vrabel. I think you've got to keep Jeffrey Simmons. He's such an impactful player for this defense. But there are some big decisions out there upcoming. What are you going to do at quarterback with Ryan Tannehill? He becomes a whole lot less expensive next season. Part of the problem for the Titans financially right now is that Julio Jones trade that didn't work out forced them to push a ton of Ryan Tannehill's money into this season. So he's got a $39 million cap hit, the highest of any quarterback in the league. That's clearly outsized for who he is, but it's because the Julio Jones trade didn't work out. His number becomes much smaller next year. So do you keep Tannehill? Do you decide you have to go get another quarterback? Because here's the thing I think we've learned from this season. The answer at quarterback is not Malik Willis. And that's why I was so critical about that draft pick last spring, the day after he traded A.J. Brown. He traded up in the draft to get Willis, who had fallen a little bit, but he's still a third-round pick. This isn't a top 10 quarterback. It's not a first-round quarterback. They got him in the third round. Malik Willis is a project, one right now that looks like a long project, and maybe one that will never pan out based off of his inefficiency in 2 games as the Titans signal caller when Ryan Tannehill was out. There's no comparison between the two right now. Tannehill is a legit NFL quarterback. Malik Willis is not. And so, all things considered, it's Tannehill's team moving forward, but if you make the decision that you have to move on from him for salary cap reasons or whatever, Malik Willis isn't the guy right now. You're going into free agency again. You're going to draft another quarterback. At best, he's competing for the job next year. At best. And I doubt that's going to happen, which means that third-round pick was wasted on a guy who isn't ultimately going to play for you unless there are injuries. A third-round pick should be a guy that plays, a guy that contributes, maybe a guy that starts. And the Titans spent one last year when they have all these other holes, all these other things, an offensive line that needs an extra body, more depth, more talent. Wide receivers, another guy who could give you somebody to stretch the field or make a big play. They drafted a backup quarterback. That is another thing that kills Jon Robinson in this whole business as you look at it. Say hello to David. David, good evening. Welcome to SportsLine.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Steve. I just want to congratulate you. You're a good sportscaster.
Thanks.
I think the biggest problem that Titans did I'm really not really a Titans fan, but what I want to tell you is they made a big mistake getting rid of A.J. Brown.
Yep.
That's the biggest mistake, and it was coming. I saw it coming from the beginning of the spring, you know. So I just want to let you know that's where they made a mistake at. And because they were well balanced when they had him. And he carried the Titans last year. I watched the whole time when Henry was hurt. He carried the Titans. So they made a terrible mistake. And he let them pay for it Sunday.
He certainly did. He said he wanted to make him regret the trade, and he did in a big way on Sunday. And I agree with you, David, because he was such a huge factor. And again, it's not just the production, it's his presence and what it means on the field. The lanes he opens up for Derrick Henry, the attention he demands as a receiver, which opens things up for some of these other receivers who frankly aren't as talented as he is. All of that is what he brings to the table. And you now see it for the Eagles. It's why they're a bona fide Super Bowl contender. And it's absent from the Titans offensively, and it's why they're struggling.
He made them well balanced also.
Yeah, there's no question. They had a passing game because of him. David, thanks so much for the call. And the thing that's so frustrating when you think about the trade is it didn't have to happen when it did. I get that AJ, for whatever reason, became a problem last year. Started getting on social media. He was mouthing off. He was complaining. He was upset about his contract. He's live on social media talking to Deebo Samuel about needing a trade and not getting the money that he wants and all that. And that goes against the Robinson and, frankly, the Vrabel way of doing things. I get that. But he is a star that changed your team, and he was under contract for this year. Maybe he would have held out. Maybe he would have skipped minicamp. Maybe he would have held out for a little bit of training camp. But he was going to play this year. And he would have taken the Titans to a totally different place if he was on the roster. Deebo Samuel wanted to trade from San Francisco as well. Guess what? They didn't do it. And he's still there, and he's still Deebo Samuel. You didn't have to trade A.J. Brown unless you got an absolutely mammoth deal, which they did not. They got draft picks, which cannot make up the loss of A.J. Brown. And ultimately, they should have paid him. This may be blasphemy, but if you look at the numbers from last year, I would argue that the more important piece to the Titans team was A.J. Brown than Derrick Henry. And I think Derrick Henry is a first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the greatest running backs in the history of the National Football League. It's a shame that they can't get him more space because he is still elite. And he could have 200-yard games like he did in Houston. Derrick Henry is incredible. But he's a running back, and in order for any running back to be good, there has to be some space. The offensive line has to get something done for him. Wide receivers are different. They line up on an island, oftentimes one-on-one or one-on-two. And I'm taking A.J. Brown in that situation more times than not. He would open up the field for the running game, whether it be Derrick Henry or anybody else back there. He would open up the field for the other wide receivers. All those things he can do that Henry can't. A.J. makes the offense around him better. Derrick makes the offense good because he's good. That's the difference. And you saw it last year when he went down. It was a crushing injury for Derrick Henry to go down and miss the final 9 games of the year. But the Titans still went 6-3 in those games, running the ball with Deontay Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard. They still ran the football effectively, and part of the reason was the presence of A.J. Brown. When A.J. was out last year, Titans were 1-3. They were 1-4 without him in his career here. That is the difference, and that, to me, is why you had to pay A.J. You had to make him happy to bring him back. Jon Robinson decided against it, and I think that decision is a huge reason why he's out of a job. Back to the phones. We say hello to Holly. Holly, good evening and welcome to the show.
Yes, I'm just calling to I agree with Amy Adams Struck's decision to let the general manager go, because it really came down to personnel when they, had traded A.J. Brown. That's what did it. I agree with what she had said and what she had made that decision. She might already have somebody in place to take his position as general manager.
Well, they don't have anything official done, and they can't do that until the end of the season by NFL rules. They said they're going to do an exhaustive search, and I believe them. But I think, to me, Holly, what this says is Mike Vrabel is going to have the biggest say in all that stuff, and that's what she's doing. And I think that's part of the reason she makes the move right now, is she's going to allow him to kind of steer the ship through these final several weeks as they try to bring guys in to fill in for some of these injuries and all that. It is all on Mike Vrabel, based off of what I'm reading from this decision today.
But the trade with A.J. Brown, that was really the done deal, because look at how great the Philadelphia Eagles are doing. Last year, they weren't doing that great. Now they're 10-1. They're Super Bowl contenders pretty much if they continue playing the way that they're playing. And it's really because of the A.J. Brown being on their team.
No question about it. They're a bona fide Super Bowl contender, and he's the guy who put them over the top. And the Titans went from being the #1 seed in the AFC last year to being a team that's, going to be just above 500 and the AFC South champs, because the AFC South stinks. And they're going to be in. They're going to have a playoff appearance, and that should be commended. But they do not look like a contender in the way they have for the last 3 or 4 seasons. My only question for you, Holly, is you agree with the decision, but do you have any problems with the decision being made right now in the middle of the season? Somebody brought this up to me earlier about there's still games to be played. It's not out of the realm of the possibility that this Titans team, given 3 AFC South games left on the schedule, the Chargers have been up and down, Cowboys are at home. It's not out of the realm of possibility that not just do they win 3, they could maybe win 4. That would put them at 10 or 11 wins again this year. Obviously, they're going to have that home playoff game as a division champion. And what happens if they win a game in the playoffs? That would change, obviously, your view of this season from what 35-10 looked like Sunday in Philadelphia. Do you think she should have waited to make this move to see how it ultimately played out? Or are you fine with the decision right here today?
I'm fine with the decision right here today, because, this is frustrating. You can't afford to make personnel mistakes, because we were doing so well. We were making progress. And then when you make a decision like that, then, you put us 2 steps back when we're trying to go 2 steps forward. So this is about progress, and we're not progressing the way that we're supposed to. And it's the frustration, and we can't make these kinds of decisions, especially going into, the next year, when they start making these, kind of business decisions on who they're going to draft and who they're going to pick and who they're going to keep and how much things are going to cost. So, we don't know exactly as far as timing whether it's the right time or not, but I just feel that this is the right decision regardless whether it's the right time or whether later. Why bother postponing the inevitable?
All right, good stuff, Holly. Thanks so much for the call. And I think that's a point there at the end, is there's a bunch of decisions coming up. Sure, for the final few weeks of the season. I think more than anything, it sends a message, as I said earlier off the top of the show, that right now this team, the expectation isn't just for you guys to coast home, win the division, and go to the playoffs and pat yourselves on the back that it was a good year. The expectation from your owner is more than that. And so you've got to do everything you can. Circle the wagons, figure out what went wrong the last 2 weeks, and find a way to compete and win in the playoffs. I think that's the message for right now. But I think part of the reason the decision is made is, to Holly's point, a lot of decisions are coming up in this offseason. We mentioned the quarterback already. At some point, you have to have a plan for Derrick Henry. He's getting to the back end of that 4-year contract. Are you going to pay him again? Are you going to do it at short term? Do you have a long-term deal? How do you evaluate that? And frankly, how do you evaluate Henry to your team as bad as the offensive line is? You're going to have to retool that line. How much of that can you do in the offseason? And given the last couple of years, would you trust Jon Robinson to retool the offensive line? You got to find playmakers at wide receiver. You got to make sure that the defense stays intact. Those are all things that are on the table for a team that is up against the cap as it is. They're going to have to make some tough decisions. They're going to have to part ways with some guys that maybe you wouldn't expect to free up some of this space, and they need to have a very good draft. All of those things, I think, play in, because if you have to make all those decisions, if you have to find all those guys to try to rebuild that roster, do you have the faith that Jon Robinson's the guy to do it? And if you don't want him making any more decisions. And that, to me, is what this says, is despite the fact that Robinson built the Titans into a consistent winner, a team that has basically averaged 9 wins a season since he took over, and this season isn't over yet, with those win totals increasing every year up until this season at least, winning the division consistently, getting to the playoffs consistently. The belief from ownership is that as they have to retool this roster now, they don't believe he's the guy to retool it, to restructure it, to get them back to that next level. This is a league full of parity. It is hard to win. It is hard to win consistently, and the Titans have done that. It is even harder to take that next step, to truly be a contender, to be a team that gets to the Super Bowl, to be a team that can win the Super Bowl. And that's what Amy Adams Strunk wants. And today was a decision made in part because she doesn't see enough right now under the status quo that they're ready to take that step. And she desperately wants to see it, and so she made a move. All our lines are open now if you'd like to get in. 737-7767. Talking about the Jon Robinson firing today by the Tennessee Titans here on SportsLine on News Channel 5+.